Hello everyone. This is the first part of the story, One Piece, The Unreal Adventure. Chapter 1. Come on baby, last set. The boy said as he pushed the huge boulder from his chest, up and down. The boy was tiny compared to the rock he was lifting up and down. Last one. The boy said, gritting his teeth as he pushed it away from his chest. Yeah, baby, lightweight. With that he threw the boulder to his side, and he was left panting on the ground. His chest rising and falling with rhythm, and sweat was all over his body. The ground quacked a bit when the boulder hit the ground. God, that was a good workout. He was already feeling his chest burning. And it's a PR, so it's double the fun. He said, laughing his odd laugh, shishishi. The boy was around the age of 14 and 15. From his goofy smile to the stitched scar under his left eye, it was obvious who he was. More so when he sat on the ground and wore his iconic straw hat. His name is Mokey D, Luffy. But he wasn't from here. He was from Earth, and things happened and now, he was here. It's already been a month and he had accepted that reality. There was no going back, so he could only move forward. It was hard to accept, but after walking through the endless white room for who knows how long he was finally able to come here. So he wasn't that upset. The last thing he remembered was some weird internet game. Even though it didn't make sense, it happened that way. The last thing he remembered was the game warning him about the dangers of One Piece world, and his headset attacking his face, its shape morphed as it attached to his face. And before he knew it, he was in a white room. The lobby. Where he would have to wait until the so-called servers were back. And the room was basically white torture for him. There was no one there. And after spending, who knows how long there, he was finally brought to One Piece world. Back on Earth, he didn't have any family, well, not that were worth mentioning. And honestly, he didn't remember much about his past life. His white torture messed up with his memories as other than some important info he didn't know much. And that included his name. It seems his brain thought that his name wasn't important enough. But, hey, he wasn't complaining. After spending, who knows how long in the lobby, he stopped questioning the reality of the situation. This world might as well be a supernatural simulation, but did he care? No. He accepted it. And he wasn't the one to give up the chance for a grand adventure, even though it wouldn't start for a long while. 3 years to be exact. It was a good thing in a way. He had a few years on his hand, and he was going to make the most out of it. The Straw Hat Pirates would be grand like no other, a true voyage for the future Pirate King. No, the strongest Pirate King. There was another reason why he accepted this world, even if he was dragged down here by a so-called internet survey disguised as some super real One Piece game. You see, he had a dream. He wanted to be the strongest back on Earth. And as a youngster powerlifter he was already making names, but other than that he didn't have any goals back there. And even though he might be able to accomplish his dream back there, doing it here, making himself the strongest man alive would be something to look forward to. Be it Whitebeard or Kaido, he was going to beat them all. And claim the place as the world's strongest. And while he was at it, he would make sure to grab the One Piece. The strongest king of the pirates has a nice ring to it. So he accepted this as his new life and tried not to dwell in his past life. Training again? A voice called out, breaking him out of his musing. It was Ace. Oh, look who came back. Luffy said, rolling his eyes, not getting up from the ground. Yeah, but you won't stop pestering me if I didn't leave. Ace said, crossing his arms. And before you say, no, I'm not going to join your crew. And that's final. Did he try to recruit Ace to his own crew? Yup. Why? Because Ace was strong. I mean, I'm way stronger than when I was back on Earth. Luffy thought, and yet Ace was stronger than me. Of course, I would want him to join my crew. And it would also be saving him from an early death this way. Even though this world is different from the One Piece I know, it should still have some similarities. Did he forget to mention that this world would be different because he so-called chose the developer's timeline in that stupid survey? Yeah, he was kind of fucked. Anyway, he did get the original Luffy's memories, but accessing them was quite the headache. Quite literally. Maybe it's because he only had this body for around a month. He didn't question the logic behind it, anime logic being prevalent and all. So, went along with it. Anyway, even without the influence of Luffy's memories, Ace was someone he would save. He was the brother he never had. Venturing through Luffy's old memories gave him a splitting headache. But he didn't need that to grow a bond with Ace. He had spent only 1 month with him. But he treated him very well. Like an actual family. And as an orphan growing up. He knew he had to keep the bond. Because it was the right thing to do. Back on Earth, he was around the age of 21, so it was awkward when a 17-year-old was treating him like a younger brother of his. But he was treated like a family member, so he wasn't that annoyed, he was glad in a way. Hey, don't give me that face. Ace said, annoyed. I said it already, I will leave today, and I don't want you seeing me off like this. Oh, yeah. Ace was going to start his journey. And he already felt saddened by it. Luffy, don't be a baby. He quickly shook his head, he wasn't going to stop Ace from having his own journey. Who said, I'm a baby? You are the baby. Ace snickered, well, something never changes. Before he sighed, sometimes, you worry me, Luffy. He said, don't worry about me, I will be just fine. And you know the promise, right? Luffy nodded, 3 years. He said, almost by instincts. Ace nodded, placing his hand on his shoulder, be sure to get strong, or I might just take the title of the King of Pirates. Luffy instinctively waved his hand away, no way. I am going to be the King of Pirates. He said, grin widening. Not just that. I will be the strongest king of the pirate. Ace just smiled, now that's the Luffy I know. He wasn't going to lie, he was going to miss the freckled boy. Luffy stood at the shore, everybody had left, and he couldn't even see Ace's boat anymore. He was actually a bit worried. He was here, and it might cause an unforeseen butterfly effect. He was actually worried about the 17-year-old boy, who just left. Ace had started his journey, and he couldn't do anything but wish him luck. It also made Luffy think about what he should be doing for the next few years. After coming to this world, he avoided using his rubber abilities, unless he was stuck in some shitty situation. Like getting stuck under the boulder that one time. But now if he wanted to get strong, he would need to use every one of his abilities. Luffy curiously stretched out his fingers, it felt odd. But at the same time, it felt familiar. He would need to get used to his ability. Also, he looked at his side, picking up the rusted, beat-up metal pipe. He wasn't going to stop using a weapon. He was going to be strong, but unlike Luffy, he wasn't going to be careless. Sharp things were the bane for his rubber body. And he was going to use a weapon if he ever faced a skilled swordsman. And it was a good thing that he could instantly do some tricks with the pipe. Unlike his devil fruit, he had inherited the use of a stick from the original Luffy. So he was going to stick with it. In future, he was planning on going to the Katakuri route or the Whitebeard route. Having a cool named weapon was, kinda cool, you know. It would also broaden his skill arsenal. Chapter 2. A few weeks later after Ace's first bounty, Luffy was in Makino's bar drinking a lemonade, when the bar's door was kicked open. And for some reason, Luffy felt fear. With hesitance, he looked over his shoulder. Where's Ace? A middle-aged man called out, who had the build of a giant. The man was at least 9 feet tall and had huge muscles. Even though Luffy knew it, it just felt weird seeing giant people, and the thing was that wasn't even a giant. It was his grandpa. It also made him jealous that after coming to this world he had lost all of his muscles. Losing them gains is quite the hard ball to swallow. But if he could look like that when he's older, then that's worth it. But looking at his so-called grandpa's legs, he was definitely not going to skip leg days. Hey, grandpa. Luffy stuttered, gulping, painful memories of head bonking came to mind. This was a first-time thing for him. Usually, he couldn't access the memories, but now they were pouring down on him. Oh God, those were painful. The bashing on the head. Ace isn't here. The man narrowed his eyes looking at Luffy, and where might he be, brat? Who knows? Big world. He started sweating, and that wasn't from knowing that this man could go toe-to-toe with the Pirate King. It was from those so-called fist of love that he didn't want to experience. The memories were painful enough. But... boink. And he felt just that, ow. You stinking Gramps, that hurts. Luffy shouted, grabbing his head. Fuck this old man hits like a truck. Why was I suffering again? Oh, yeah, 'cause one of my so-called brothers started his pirate journey. Well, fuck him. But then again, if he found out that Sabo was a revolutionary, he might drag him to Marineford and start his early career as a marine. And then came another, boink. Ouch. What was that for? You weren't paying attention, Luffy. Garp said, why did that brat go off to be a pirate? And here I was trying to train you guys to be marines. I won't. Luffy grabbed his mouth. He was going to get himself killed. What's that? Garp asked, you said something? Luffy hastily shook his head. That would have been stupid. Garp nodded at that before taking a sit on the bar. Makino, give me some lunch. And Luffy, you want something? Meat? Luffy tilted his head, and Garp nodded, still scowling and irritated. Of course, you would want that. The man scoffed. Meat for two. Well, at least he was going to get something else to eat, rather than a beating. Luffy was seen lying in a clearing inside the forest. Around him were at least hundreds of human-sized monkeys knocked out. So you are still using your pipe? Garp said, not far from him, picking his nose. I thought you were not going to use that anymore. Luffy supported himself with his long pipe and stood up, still huffing and puffing. Well, my devil fruit isn't anything special. So I have to be creative. He said in between his breaths. Of course, he knew how special his fruit powers were. But he didn't need to market it around. Garp raised an eyebrow, and here I thought the monkey family's intellect skipped a generation. Wah. Nothing. Garp then stood up, I am leaving today, you better not go out of the island on your own. I don't need you repeating what Ace did. I won't, Luffy said, I still have 3 years. He blurted out, his Luffy instincts would get him killed. Garp gave a frustrated scowl, but before he could say something Luffy spoke, Gramps, who's my father? Okay, this was the only way he knew to throw the man off. Garp was taken aback by the question, where did that come from? Well, you know how Ace is the, you know whose son. So I wanted to know my dad was. Luffy asked, is he dead? The boy looked a bit scared. Acting isn't my strong suit, but I hope it convinces the old man. No. Garp said, and sighed when he saw Luffy feeling relief. Then where is he? Can I meet him? Is he a marine? Is he strong? What's his devil fruit? Shut it, brat. Garp said, massaging his forehead. Way too many questions. Luffy, shut up. I can only say his name. Garp said, and Luffy nodded, but don't say it to anyone. He said the last part with a serious expression. Luffy slowly nodded. Yeah, like I want to have a buster call on my ass. His name is Dragon. He is a dragon? Luffy shouted, overreacting, then comically pointed at Garp. You did it with a dragon? That's disgusting and awesome at the same time. Garp spat blood before punching the lights out of Luffy. But was it worth it? Definitely, it was worth it. Why you? His name is Dragon. Mokey D, Dragon. He's not a dragon, Garp said with a tick mark on his forehead, and I am not even going to ask how you know about birds and bees stuff. Stupid brats growing up too fast. And he left, his irritation back on his face. Luffy smiled cheekily, spitting out dirt before standing up. Oh boy, that hurt. But it was worth it, throwing the old man off was quite fun. Wait, Gramps. Don't leave me behind. Luffy then followed Garp, who grumpily speed up. After the day was over, a marine ship with the head of a dog came to pick the vice admiral up. Luffy, unlike other times, stayed. Oi, Gramps. What is it now? Garp asked. When are you going to get back? Garp frowned at the question, maybe not having Ace changed his grandkid after 6 months. On your birthday. He said, not irritated this time, just curious. Why, brat? Luffy said, before opening and closing his mouth. How should he say it? Not gonna lie, it is a bit embarrassing. Just say it, brat. Can you bring me one of those weapons that's like a stick but not a stick? And has a blade on the top of it? Luffy said, in one breath. Yeah, asking something just felt a bit weird and embarrassing. It kind of feels like I'm taking advantage of him. Which I am. I'm going to get used to this stuff. Garp grinned this time. You want a spear? Rubbing his chin. Or a naginata? I don't know, whichever you can get. Has to have a good enough to last till I get as old as you. He didn't have a preference, he wanted a pointed weapon just in case he wasn't able to learn the Rokushiki in these 3 years. But rather than getting an answer, he got hit in the head. Ow! What was that for? Who are you saying, old brat? Luffy gave him a deadpan look. The old man had gone senile, it was official, and got another hit. I will see what I can do. The old man muttered as he started walking off. Yeah. I want the best. Luffy said, ignoring the winching pain in his head. Garp smirked a bit, thinking things over. Yeah. I will get you one. He had one in mind. It was the first time Luffy actually wanted something from him, and so he needed to show off a bit. Maybe that would put some interest in Marines in the boy. Chapter 3. 6 months passed in a blink of an eye. Luffy had improved a lot in these last few months. Sure, he wasn't strong like how Luffy was when he started his journey, but he was getting there. 498. 499. 500-inch Luffy said there was a huge rock 10 times his size on his back. And after the last push-up, he was laying down on the running water. I feel so damn weak. He was on a small waterfall inside the forest. A place where he could relatively train his non-devil fruit powers. This was also the reason why he was gaining strength quickly. He took a page out of original Luffy's Wano training, and surprisingly it worked well. As a previous powerlifter, he was well acquainted to monitor his strength gain, even if it was small. And doing water training was turning out great for him. Though he didn't know if this training would make him gain some form of resistance. In general, a devil fruit user couldn't swim underwater, but was there a way to make yourself resistant enough to gain back the swimming ability? It seemed far-fetched, but he was willing to try. And it wasn't like he had to give extra effort. Gritting his teeth, he stood up, removing the rock from his back. Gaining back his usual strength felt incredible. And it was also good that he was getting used to his devil fruit abilities. Training this way was a hassle. It was a good thing that he had a waterfall on the island. A devil fruit user usually had to immerse 1/3 of his body in water to start getting weak. At the same time, his or her devil fruit powers wouldn't work. And that would be an issue when he would start his voyage. He wouldn't be able to train that way. And he wasn't stupid enough to try and dump himself in the ocean for some small gains. That would be reckless and stupid. Luckily, he didn't inherit those quirky habits from the original Luffy. So he had to look for a way to gain sea stones. He should look around the kingdom. And if that doesn't work, he could always try to sneak up to Garp's ship and try his luck there. Though getting caught would be too much of a pain. 6 months have passed, and training kind of got a bit boring. Sure, fighting giant beasts that could give old-age dinosaurs a run for their money was fun. But it got boring nonetheless. He barely knew anyone in the village. Sure, Luffy knew the others in the village. But he didn't. And it felt just awkward mingling with them. Though Makino was cool and she wouldn't constantly pester him like the bandits. And yet the bandits and Makino were the only social life he had, outside of the sudden visits by Garp. Maybe he should get a pet. It might help him get rid of some of his boredom. Even though he didn't want to admit it, he felt bored when the Mount Bandits weren't around. So he had gained the hobby of pranking them here and there, just for the sake of it. Having all the free time in the world meant more time for training. It did nothing for his social life, but it did make him strong. But even if he constantly pushed himself harder, without any challenge his strength gain would have diminishing returns. He was following the power route approach to things, but he knew for this world's standards it wasn't the optimal way. He should ask the old man for some training advice next time. The adrenaline you get from wrestling a giant bear is no joke. It was almost addictive, sometimes. And he concluded that it was a better way to gain strength. But there weren't that many challenges in the island anymore. Still, he would have loved to have someone teach him some actual combat. Luffy's fighting style was pure chaos, his fighting style fully revolved around his devil fruit abilities. And he was a powerlifter back on Earth, not a kickboxer. He really regretted not picking up some martial arts in his last life. Today Garp or Grandpa was going to return to the village. And it would be lying that wasn't excited. He was eagerly waiting for Garp's gift. But then again he had some doubts that he would give him something amazing. There's no way I will be getting a named sword, but it would at least be better than these junks, he said, looking down on the rusted and almost broken spear he was using. He had gone to Goa Kingdom and searched every shop, but he couldn't find any decent weapons. The current spear he was using was stolen from a marine base in the Goa Kingdom. It wasn't much, but it had to do. And he wasn't going to be sword user, that was more of a Zoro thing. He was using a spear, by the looks of it, it won't hold much longer. It was a weapon that he could use like his pipe, with the added benefit of a blade on the end. Luffy took his spear and started walking down to the village. It was already noon, maybe Grandpa was already there. He needed to be strong and that meant needed to take every opportunity that he could take. I found you, brat. A voice called out, and Luffy looked up and from the sky he saw a giant man descending. Chapter 4. I found you, brat. A voice called out, and Luffy looked up and from the sky he saw a giant man descending. Luffy quickly jumped back with his rubber body and the man landed in front of him, blowing dust and breaking the ground, creating a crater on the ground. Come on, Gramps. Luffy shouted, picking himself up and dusting off his clothes. I just washed up. Garp grinned, look what I got for you, brat. And the giant of a man tossed a large thing at Luffy, who barely escaped, as it stuck into the ground. It was a weapon wrapped in dirty white cloth. Check it out and see if it's to your liking. He needed no more explanation, he took away the covering and a silver metal pole came into view, and the blade attached to it was around 3 to 4 feet. A single-edged blade. The design was so that the blade looked like coming out of a golden dragon's mouth, and it even had golden engravings on it. It was a naginata, a type of Japanese spear. Whitebeard uses one as well. But that wasn't the part that made his jaw drop. Nope. It was the fact that this was an antique museum piece. The cloth had it written on it. This thing was a freaking great-grade sword. The cloth had a small description on it. Name, unknown. Description, being one of the 21 great-grade swords, its durability is unparalleled. The weapon was crafted in the lost lands of samurai and was used by a pirate before the golden age of piracy. There were other information, but they were smudged out for him to read. No freaking way. Who the heck would gift a 15-year-old that kind of weapon? But he wasn't complaining. Luffy grinned, grabbing the weapon that was a bit large for his size. Meh, he will grow into it, and lifted it. Or at least tried to. That thing was freaking heavy. Bahahaha. The weapon is yours if you can lift it. Garp laughed, seeing his grandson struggle. Believe me, Luffy, you aren't strong enough yet. Bahahaha. What was this? A screenplay of Thor? Of course, the old man wouldn't just give it to Luffy. Luffy finally gave up, trying to lift it. He snapped his head towards the laughing old man. Why can't I lift it? He could lift a boulder 4 times his size, so what's wrong with him? Bahahaha, 'cause you ain't strong enough. Why you, Goma no, pistol. The rubber boy punched with his stretched arm, only to get deflected by a wave of hand. Bahahaha, no wonder you are weak. Garp said, really getting on Luffy's nerves. I will teach you to wield that blade if you join the Marines. Yeah, then you can take that back and shove it up Sengoku's ass. Luffy said, pointing at the weapon. Garp shut his laugh, then looked at his weapon, then his grandson. Before he cried out another laugh. Bahahaha. I'm enjoying this more than I should. You are really a crook, you know that. He grumbled. Don't worry, you will grow into it. Bahaha. Fight me, you old geezer. Old geezer? And the fight ensured, or like it always was, a one-way betting ensured. He was improving, he could feel it, but it was nowhere near the old man's strength. Fucking monster, he grumbled. It also motivated him to push himself further in training. And then the old geezer left, saying something about not having enough time to check into the nearest marine base. Luffy picked his broken self up, looking at the weapon. He grabbed the cold silver metal pole. I am going to make you mine, one day. And that's a promise. With that, he left the weapon there. He was sure other than Garp, no one else would be able to wield it. And it's not like he had an inventory to store the dang thing. Man, having a cheat would have been awesome now. The next day, Garp came back from nowhere. He might have been in Goa Kingdom's marine base or on his personal ship, Luffy didn't know. But he did come by and wanted to drag Luffy to some unconventional method of training. But Luffy wasn't having any of that, he wanted to do something else. Come brat, let's get you some training done. You need some muscles on those bones if you want to be a marine just like your amazing grandpa. Garp said, only getting an annoyed look from the boy. And that piqued Garp's curiosity. The boy usually went head first and spoke his mind. So he asked. Why the look? You know you are a liar, old man. What do you mean, brat? Asked Garp, peeking his nose. This. Luffy pulled out a paper from his pants which had a picture of a man wearing a green cloak and a red tattoo painted on his left side. Not just any paper, it was a bounty poster of the Revolutionary Dragon. Garp's eyes almost came out of his socket when saw that. And Luffy wondered how that was even possible, but he put that thought in the back burner in his mind. Anime logic and all. and snatched the bounty poster away. How the heck did the brat find a poster of him? What the? Gramps! Give it back, Luffy shouted childishly, grabbing the Marine's attention, but the old man was still in a daze. Heh, take that, old man. Why didn't you tell me my father was a great pirate? Huh. Garp blinked, your father ain't a pirate. Liar. Luffy said, taking out another copy of the same bounty poster from somewhere. See, he even has a bounty. There's so many zeros, it's even bigger than aces. It's kinda amazing. Hey, by the way, who had a greater bounty, my pops or his? I mean, I didn't know he was a pirate and all. He said. Wait, what? Garp then looked at his grandson, before figuring out the kid didn't know about the stuff. With a heavy sigh, he placed his hand on his grandkid's shoulder. He isn't a pirate. He's something even worse. He's a revolutionary. The head of the revolutionary, in fact. So he's strong. Is he dangerous? Luffy asked. Garp nodded. Even more than Shanks. Garp nodded again. But then he looked at Luffy, who had stars in his eyes. Oh. This was bad. Garp thought, don't you ever think about it. That's so cool. Luffy shouted, with stars in his eyes. Garp of course boinked him in the head with a fist of love. That's not good, brat. That's worse than being a pirate. He said, and how did you know that this was your old man? Luffy shook his head, avoiding the signs of a concussion. He answered, I didn't. I just searched my stash of bounty poster and found it. I didn't know who he was. Luffy said, looking at Garp, but judging from your reaction. He's my dad, isn't he? Garp scoffed. Why did he have to fall for the oldest trick in the book? And lately, he was showing signs of intelligence. He just hoped that Luffy wouldn't be following in his father's footsteps. Chapter 5. Yeah, and he's a pain in the ass, said Garp. Don't even plan on being a revolutionary. Nah. I'm good. He grinned, I will become the strongest king of the pirates. Garp for the first time was glad to hear that. It was better being a revolutionary. Wait, did you say you have a stash of bounty posters? Yeah, Luffy nodded, there were tons of them in the Marine base. Marine base? Garp said, pulling his fist up. Luffy quickly slapped his mouth shut. Shit. He actually found them there after stealing some of their weapons and kept them. But why did he slip up? You didn't happen to be the thief who is stealing from the Marines, are you? It was only once. Luffy said, maybe twice or 3 times, but it was accidental. I promise, I just slipped. Garp just sighed, it all seemed to be a coincidence. Personally, Garp didn't want Luffy to know who his father was, and after what happened with Ace, he didn't want Luffy to hate Dragon. Sure, he didn't really like what the brat was doing, but it was an honorable goal. Even though his personal beliefs were more aligned with Marines. Dragon had more radical approach to things. Though, he could see why. Anyhow, Gramps, teach me something. Luffy said, a bit childishly, teach me something and I might just forgive you for your mishap. He said, pouting and crossing his arms. And I might not ever question about him again. He muttered the last part. But Garp heard it just fine. Honestly, he was willing to give anything to stop the boy from asking about that man. Shanks was a bad influence enough, he didn't another one for his grandson. And what might that be, brat? Teach me. Luffy said, pointing at the bumps on his head, how you are able to hurt me. Garp laughed, bahaha. Oh, that's called hockey. Not that he would be able to learn it, of course. Luffy smiled, stars in his eyes, oh then teach me that hockey thing. Bahahahaha, in your dreams, brat. Garp said, "Join the Marines, I will teach you personally." Well, it was difficult to train someone in hockey if they didn't have immense willpower to fuel the thing, but from his perspective Luffy had a lot of it. He was stubborn as they get, and recently he found out that he was pushing himself more on training after Ace left. And training like that and being stubborn was the definition of willpower in his books. But the thing was Luffy wasn't strong enough to learn that, yet. Luffy gave an annoyed expression, "Come on, Gramps. Teach me something cool." Luffy said, "Something that makes my punches harder." Garp rubbed his chin, then an idea came to his mind. "I can't teach you hockey. But I can teach you the next best thing." And the Garp jumped off, high, kicking the air as he did, that he kicked again, and he started climbing the air. Soon Garp came back with a smile on his face. "How was that, brat?" he shouted down. Was he going to teach his grandson Rokushiki? Nope. Son Goku would have his ass. But he could show it to him to get him interested in the Marines. Also he did feel kinda bad that the weapon that he gifted Luffy couldn't be while dead unless he became strong enough. So he could throw a bone or two. There are in total 6 of those techniques. They are called the Rokushiki. It takes a strong body and mind to learn it. Cool. The boy had stars in his eyes. "Teach me." "Oh, that's easy, you just kick the air," Garp said as if that was matter of fact. "Or join the Marines." "Come on, teach me, please, Gramps," Luffy said, in a pleading tone. Garp landed down seeing this but didn't say anything. He just picked his nose with a boring expression, "Nah. Figure it out." Bahahaha. Only Dragon was able to do it, and that was when he trained with the Marines, before leaving their cause. And he was sure Luffy wouldn't be able to learn it. Garp grinned, enjoying the frustrated expression of Luffy. But he would help out his grandson. So take something out from his pocket, and tossing it to Luffy. It was a small notepad, like book. "There are a few workouts here that will help you with that technique. They are pretty hard, but they build up strength in the body overall, and will make it so you can learn these cool techniques." Of this book was only a demonstration written by Zephyr. They were kinda rare to find these days. To use the Rokushiki, one needs to build up their body's strength in specific areas, and only after that they would be eligible to learn the techniques. This book just covered the first part. The second part was only doable if you went to Marineford and trained under an instructor. Sengoku used that to make all good candidates learn in from Marineford. So he was basically giving the boy way to get strong, and by his estimate if he was able to gain strength according to the small book, he might have a chance to lift up the Naginata. Luffy smiled, before frowning, when he opened the book. And then looked at Garp, "But I can't read." Garp threw his head back and laughed. "I know. Bahaha," he said, "teach yourself that. And be quick, I will take it back tomorrow." He lied, as he started to walk away. "I am going to catch some fish to eat." Also, he wasn't worried, sure those workouts would build a body for Rokushiki techniques, but that was if Luffy could make himself sit there and read it. Which most likely he couldn't. More so when he wasn't able to read in the first place. This will be his bait to catch Luffy into the Marines. Also, this wasn't some highly advanced technique. This was just the first part. The second part was the most important, where it was detailed how to perform the techniques. And other than the official Marine source, and some black market material, he was sure Luffy wouldn't get his hand on that. So he was sure Luffy wouldn't be able to learn them. Soon Garp would come to realize how wrong he was. And a certain someone would be up on his ass for that. This marks the end of part 1 of the story, One Piece, The Unreal Adventure. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.